Hello. The point of this part of the video is to deploy this Pet Social API to an app service resource in the Azure portal. I'll be doing that using GitHub workflows. That's basically just pushing your code to GitHub. You git push to certain branch. Of course, I'm on the deploy branch. And if I then do a pull request from the, so it's kind of what GitHub asks me here, compare and pull request. If I do this and then I merge, this deploy branch into the main branch, the GitHub workflow will make sure your code base is deployed to Azure. Of course, we don't have the GitHub workflow yet, so that will be made while creating the resource. And we want an app service since that's appropriate for backend apps, backend projects like APIs, background worker services. Create resource. Let's see, is it web app? It's probably app service. No. It might be just web app. Why is this not clear? Let's just click on app services, and create a new one. You see, these are only my backend projects. This is Razor Pages website. This is the API of a previous project and the background worker service of a previous project. I'll just create a new one. Add it to my existing resource group. If you don't have one yet, create one. If you don't have an Azure account yet, create one. And you'll need to create a subscription as well, just adding your payment details to it. I think one app service and the database scaled down to the lowest capacities will cost about $5 a month or something. A bit more maybe. App name, Pet Social API. And here you can choose code, Docker, or static web app. This Docker container might also be interesting for future scenarios, more advanced scenarios. Static web app is for the front ends. I think that's a weird distinction here. It says create web app, so probably it's probably almost the same flow whether you want a app service or a static web app resource. Select runtime. I'm using .NET 6. 7 is not yet. Yeah, well, preview. LTS is the last stable version. Let's do that. Region. Don't know why that's important, but sorry. I'll always pick Linux, not Windows. West Europe. I don't know why this region matters here. Yeah, probably availability reasons, but okay. And then Linux plan, I already have one for We could create a new one if you want. And then the basic ones are running on with this amount of memory, amount of RAM. And zone redundancy doesn't seem to be supported. Anyway, let's see, we can do more. Let's see, so after filling all this in, it either says next to deployment or review and create. Let me just check that out. I don't think that is what we want because we didn't really set up the deployment yet. And I see the application insights aren't there either. I'm also not sure if we picked the lowest plan. Oops. If we can go any lower, that's probably depending on this Linux plan. So deployment, GitHub action settings. This one we want to enable. I already connected my GitHub account to this. Could change or add a new one. Organization, just all of that. Repository, it has a list of my GitHub repositories. I'm working in this one, but. And then the branch. Let's see. This is the Pet Social API. Don't worry actually about these right now, you can still change them. All this is going to do is create a workflow configuration file, which you can still alter afterwards. So don't stress about it too much right now, because I'm going to take a slightly different approach, but most commonly it's a good idea to just have it on the main branch, because you'll most likely merge all your branches back into the master or main branch eventually. So you can do some more networking and stuff. That is monitoring. You can enable the application insights, might be useful. But I'm going to make another video about these once I figured it out myself. Okay, let's review and create. You could also preview the file. That is the file we generate from our settings right now. And these are going to be pushed to your GitHub repository. So you really need your code to be on GitHub. There might be, it might support other versioning platforms, but I'm not sure about that. I actually had to move my code over from GitLab to GitHub to do this. So yeah. First you start with a name that's just going to be, let me try to show you in another project. These actions are what's running. So every time I merge a branch into the main, that triggers these files, because yeah, on the main. So this one says push on the main, okay. But what this does is, yeah, so it goes through all these steps. So to build the project and deploy it, deploy it to this new app service resource. Okay. But this name actually is the one you'll be seeing in the actions. That's the line underneath. So this grayed out line. Build and deploy ASP.NET Core app to Azure Web App, and then slash the name. That's actually okay, I would say. But maybe I prefer the name in front. Yeah, I cannot edit this file, unfortunately. But if you have multiple app services, it's going to be not very declarative if every action name is more or less the same. So I'll try to put the project name in front. I'll probably change the branch I want to deploy from per project. So I might want pet social slash and then the wildcard. More about that later. I'll probably want to change these my app ones just to let me think about that. Maybe I should change that to the project name, I would say. Because again, if you have multiple I would think if you have multiple app services and it's all running in my app that you could have conflicts, but now I'm thinking this is containerized, so if I'm not mistaken, yeah, definitely don't know everything about these, how these are deployed, but I'll be for safety, I'll change these to my project's name, so Pet Social API and environment production. Yeah, that wasn't really helpful because I don't know all the details in depth. So we're just gonna do review and create, and this is going to push that or commit that file to our GitHub project. Maybe we should check again. We have the right repository, the main, okay. Of course we could change it here, but yeah. Review and create. Oops. We change anything? Nope. Create. And now it's deploying. I'm not sure if it's immediately going to take the project on the that's currently on the main branch and deploy it, or if it's I think it's going to wait for the next push to the main branch to then activate these actions, of course. I'm actually working in another one, a private repository. I'll be pushing this one in a minute, but you can already see these GitHub workflows got added, which either update Azure App Services build and deploy workflow config. This is actually what just happened from Azure did that. Let's go to the resource. And then you see some options which might be useful in the future. Stop, restart, browse, this is the public URL at the moment. And then you'll see whether it's received some requests or errors. Let's see what we see if we browse it. I think it's going to be a default Microsoft page displaying. Yeah, so that's great. You could follow some more guides if you need. How I usually check what's happening now is just by going to this log stream, if I'm not mistaken. This is not the proper way. This is just going to be the logs of the Docker the containerized app. So it's just going to be everything. If I'm not mistaken, yeah. So like the Ubuntu, the Linux environment logs, but also if your app shows any logs, it's going to come in here as well, be displayed in here as well. But this is not the nicest way, of course, to track your application logs. Anyway, this URL I'm going to copy and paste in my frontend project, which I'll be deploying after this one. So let's see. It's going to be multiple places. Don't I have a config in here? Paste it in my app settings of my Blazor WebAssembly project, my frontend project. And this doesn't have any sensitive data actually. Just gonna replace this base URL to the new one. The development one just has the local hosts, so that's it. Should be enough. Also, I have something extra for the PWA. Yes, in here, local environment. Going to paste this one in here. And I think I'm all set. Let's now change this this workflow. Let's see, I'm going to check out to the main branch and do a git fetch or git pull. And let's see if I now have these workflows. Don't see them. Let's do a git pull. Yes, now I have the GitHub workflows, and I have one workflow Pet Social API. First thing I said I was going to do is put this in front. Gonna use a pipe. Let's just not use build and deploy ASP.NET Core App to Azure Web App. Do I want this long name? Yeah, let's just run with it. Like I said, I was going to change these my app ones to Pet Social API, lowercase. Oh, spilled my water. And I actually want to change this branch to I would say could call it a feature branch or something, or you could I'm going to make my own release branches. I'm sorry. And I forgot something really important. This workflow file is assuming this pet social project is just on the root folder. If we take a look, pet social API, which is not, of course, not in the root folder. It's actually in the pet social folder and then pet social API. So let's add let's specify this in the build step, working by using the working directory. And then the path, so pet social, and then social API. I think we also need that, of course, in the publish, like this, and somewhere else. I think that's all we need to change. Okay, cool. And now if we would, then again, this is for my use case, just leave this to main or master. That might be sufficient for your use case. I think that's all there is. Let's see if we can push this. Seems pushed. Let's now take a look at our workflows, if it did. Okay, it looks good. Let's check out our actions. 13 minutes ago, that is, okay, this might not have been the smartest move from me, because I'll probably always merge to the main first, or maybe not, maybe I should anyway, let's just do it, merge, deploy into main. That should be the latest code. Let's see, take a look at actions. Nothing should have been triggered since we're just merging to the main. Oops. What am I doing? These workflow files can, if I'm not mistaken, also be used for testing before you deploy anything. But I'll go over that in a future video, not right now. Let's see. And what I wanted to do now is simply similar as working with feature and release branches. I kind of want to make a release branch. I call it pet social. What now? First deploy something. first attempt to deploy. I'm now going to branch off from the main, which is yeah, a bit extra. Of course, the workflow is listening for a push, so I'm not sure if this is going to trigger that. Yeah, it seems to have triggered. Build and deploy ASP.NET Core. I hope. Let's take a look. It's going to build and deploy. Looks good. It can, of course, run into errors. We'll see about that. Okay, it seems to have deployed. It's giving me some weird things, warnings about Node.js. Um, I hope I didn't accidentally select a node environment or something. And these other warnings are just warnings from the same ones when you build your project locally. And we see the link in here. I'm not sure if this is a cached one. Yeah, okay. This should be better. It looks like it's broken, but that's just because our production one doesn't have any um, anything, I would say. So let's open Postman. Uh, and oops, where's my project? Instead of localhost, we're going to try and access this one. Oops. To-dum, to-dum, to-dum. Ah, and it works from the first time. Lovely. It took a while because, yeah, of the database, I think the first call always seems to take a while. And we have our rate limiting. Sorry, that's from a previous video. Anyway, it's working, so now we can deploy our front end to a static web app resource. See you in the next part. Yeah, something I forgot to mention. So now if we actually go to our app service, our new one, that social API, you'll see there's been some activity, which is great. You'd probably see in the log stream, you'd probably see some application logs. Seems like from the app starting and then doing a request to get places, the one we did before. It also gives me some failed to determine HTTPS port. Yeah, that's anyway. If we go to configuration, you can probably override app settings, so environment variables. Let's see, application settings, connection strings. You can override these. I think that's going to trigger a restart of your application. Yeah, can do a lot more. You can Let's see. You could link this with an existing domain you bought somewhere with a nice domain name. Let me just take a look at an existing project. I don't usually do this for backend projects since yeah, it doesn't really matter which name it has, like which URL, if it's human readable or not. Um, but for a static web app, so a front-end project, this is important. Then you could add custom domain names. So yeah, but then you'll have to add a CNAME record or an A record, or change the name servers or something at your host where you bought the domain name. Anyway, that's actually for next videos, I would say. And yeah, that's about all I wanted to show for deploying a .NET Web API to Azure App Service. I'm going to follow the exact same steps to deploy another background worker service. So this pet social worker. It's also just going to be deployed to a app service instance resource. But there's one thing to note there. For some reason, these app service apps restart or they get recycled or something every 10 minutes. So well, mm, I guess they get recycled if they're not active, if they're not getting accessed for a period of time or something. With an API, that's going to be less likely than with a background worker. So a background worker, mine are mostly set to run once every 24 hours, but since it restarts every 10 minutes due to inactivity, it's gonna re-execute every 10 minutes instead of every 24 hours. For that, you could maybe find an always on option, set that in Azure if possible. I wouldn't recommend that because it's going to cost you and might have some other side effects. What I usually do for that is just keep track of my background service worker runs, and I just say if it already run once in the last 24 hours, I just skip. So if I'm not mistaken, so I actually put this 24 hours delay, but it's not actually taking that into account once deployed. So let's see about this service. At the top, I kind of get my last worker run, and if it run within the last day, I'll just skip it. Else, and on a successful run, I'll save it to the database. On an unsuccessful run, I'll also save it to the database, but just with other values. So I'll quickly deploy that one, and then in the next video I might do the next video might be very similar, but for a front-end project, not a back-end project. Let's just get everything. Let's do a git fetch again. Okay, see you in the next video.